Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 28th STEM lecture series. This event is titled Women Opening Opportunities for Success in the STEM Fields. And today we have with us Dr. Stacie Koonhow. She is a native of San Antonio and an associate professor of biology here at St. Philip's College. She has earned a Bachelor of Science in Biology from Prairie View A&M University and master's in science and a PhD in biology. Um, she, both of those degrees were earned at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Her doctoral research focused on adult neurogenesis, which occurs in the hippocampus, a brain structure involved with memory consolidation. These studies were exciting because they revealed mechanisms that cause the survival of new cells, which is important for finding cures for diseases such as Alzheimer's. Her passion for neurobiology developed from personal and professional experiences. Dr. Koonhow has experience in industry where she was a manager in the Department of Genetic Testing at Qualtex Laboratories. She also has taught secondary science education. Dr. Koonhow takes pride and a strong interest in making memories with her family and friends while living a purposeful life. She has a desire to bring awareness to STEM topics and careers while leading and serving in her community at large. Please welcome Dr. Stacie Koonhow.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, we do have some questions that we would like to ask. But as students are viewing this presentation, if they come up with any questions of their own, we invite them to ask those questions in a form, which will have access to that QR code and a URL at the end of the presentation, okay? So we'll go ahead and begin with our first main question. So as you look back at your life, what was your most positive learning experience and why?
That's an interesting question. I think the most positive learning experience I've had is learning, like at least in my studies or during my undergraduate and graduate years, is learning the most effective way to study, surprisingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my students have the same question. But what I found is that it was through my way, right? It wasn't my friend's way. Not my study group's way. It was something that I had to actually develop over the years. And so what I found was that it was an ever evolving process. The way I studied in undergrad was not the same way that I studied as a graduate student. So I learned that it was very much that during that process that I was a visual learner and what that meant to me. Mm-hmm. So I had to find ways to actually bring the pages of my textbook to life. And in doing so, I was called everything from a nerd to this, that, the other, from outside members of my friends and family, but I had to do what I needed to do. So in doing those tricks, one of the biggest things that I found was I ran over to Walmart and I picked up one of those big whiteboards, right? And a whole markers, a whole bunch of colored markers there to help me. And so what I did was I talked myself through complex processes and as I read through the material, and that would actually help me grasp the concepts. Then I would look over at my whiteboard and see all the colors and figures, and that would help me recall on assessment days or on days that I just really needed to grasp concepts and put concepts together. So I found that the learning process there, it was just something that was trial and error. And also, I learned that how I studied, again, it could change and it progressed as I went through the undergraduate and graduate degree. And so learning this was actually a positive thing for me, and it helped my overall academic success.
That's very good. I'm glad you brought that up because I know that is one of the biggest challenges of being a student is finding out how to be your best student. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And then, and teaching others, you might find a way to kind of provide that, and it may be somebody else's way, and if it's not, that's great because it's their journey, right?
But, I agree. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our second question. So this one is, what made you decide to major in biology?
this is kind of a complex, long story for me in a way, but very kind of straightforward as if I had to think about it and you know, and just summary, right? But
Mhm.
growing up, I was always surrounded by like the medical field. My father, he was a doctor, he was a psychiatrist, and my mom was a medical technologist. So there were magazines, there were books, and all of these things that were around the house with STEM topics. So what I found was, I didn't know I would do this, but I would sit down sometimes as a child and I would pick through those magazines and I'd pick them up and I'd read them. And then I started wondering, oddly, how I could contribute to the field. So I think that just kind of grew throughout my childhood. And so what I find interesting is that my decision to major in STEM, it started off for one reason, and then it slowly transitioned into another reason. So during my undergraduate years, it was my wholehearted intention to again go to medical school. I wanted to be a physician at any cost. You know, when I graduated undergrad, I took a year off to study for the MCAT, which is the exam you have to take for entrance to medical school.
Mhm.
But while studying for that, I decided, well, you know what, I might as well earn some money while doing so. So I started teaching high school, in fact. So while I was teaching, I started to think about ways I could get my high school students to not only kind of memorize biological concepts that were pretty hard, but also to develop the ability to convert them into long-term memory so they could use that information later on.
Mhm.
So as I was kind of looking at ways to help them learn about this, I came across a topic that I never actually looked at before, and it was involving the human brain. I found myself kind of getting engrossed in the topic of learning and memory. So at the same time, I was researching this. My grandmother started showing signs of dementia and Alzheimer's.
Oh,
Yeah, so in addition to thinking about ways to kind of learn and all that, when I'm thinking about these brain processes, a whole nother topic entered my brain that was related to the field. Um, so I also kind of had the idea that it was my duty then to kind of find not only the answer for my students, but also the answer to my grandmother who was suffering from this memory deficit. So while I was teaching, I could kind of see my wheels spinning and like the transitioning happening from like medical school to something that I had never, ever, ever thought about really. So at first it was scary, but I said, let's dive into this because it's something I really care about, right?
mhm.
So I began to kind of research at that point, research programs that focused on learning and memory and found that in San Antonio, lo and behold, where I was from, there was a neurobiology program that focused on the exact topic I was looking about, and that was at UTSA. And so at that point, I started to become less interested in medicine, like I was said before, and more interested in teaching and research. So I applied to the program at UTSA and I was admitted. I took graduate classes that focused on neurobiology topics, and that led to me receiving my master's in biology. And what I found then was that I fell in love with the brain, with research related to it, and then I applied to the PhD program because I said, I got to find out my answers, right? I have to look into this research that's so interesting. So I think you know, I almost became like I felt like I felt became a scholar because I was so interested in it. So my research, as you mentioned before, Jessica, is devoted to something called neurogenesis. And so most people say, well, what is that, right? And so a lot of times people ask, well, they think, oh, all the brain cells you're born with all the brain cells that you'll have, but
Mhm.
really that's not true. There are two areas in the brain where we regenerate new brain cells. So to me, that was like, wow, does that mean that there could be a possibility of new things happening if new neurons are coming along? So basically, what that is, the word neurogenesis means that there's growth and development of nervous cells and tissue, which to me in my mind equals potential for for curing something like Alzheimer's, which is a degenerative disease. So
Mhm.
it was my hope at the time with my research to find a way to provide strong evidence that new networks of cells would allow people like my grandmother with dementia to create new memories while reserving the long-term ones. And I was able to find great findings while I was in grad school, which suggested that those new neurons that are born today in your brain have the ability to develop and survive when they are stimulated, and what receptors are actually responsible for that survival. And so these findings to me, they were very exciting, because it gave a glimpse of hope, that we could actually create possibly the perfect medication therapy for people that with Alzheimer's or dementia. And so I know we have a long track ahead of us, but that's maybe one answer, right? With some of the work that I've done. But during my doctoral work, unfortunately, my mother was also diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and my work became even more significant. And so in the past, I've made it a point to actually focus on the field of research that's really important to me. So I think that's really important in one's path in STEM. But in recent years, I found my way back to another love, which was my passion, which was teaching, right? And so I toggle between the two. But so as you can kind of tell from my story, my pathway, I think, with STEM, it had some unexpected twists and turns, but I've always held a general interest in the area.
Gotcha. Very good. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, most times there is some outside influential factor that does definitely steer us one way or versus another. So
And I
thank
feel
you
like it can just
sharing that.
drive you. It's kind of like a
Yes,
motivating factor. Yeah.
yes, definitely. Okay, I think that might lead us into our next question, which was, what have been your greatest challenges in getting your education, and how did you overcome those challenges?
So I would say that I experienced a lot of challenges, and challenges are to be expected. Although I thought it was just going to be smooth sailing, like I'm just going to jump in there and I'm going to, study, and I'm going to get my degree, and then I'm going to have my career. Little did I know, little sticks would be put in the way, which would test that, right? Test
Yeah.
that, test that along the way. But my biggest challenge, I would say, was when getting my education, was actually figure out how to manage those personal situations that would come up or pop up along the way. One of them occurred while I was in my doctoral program. Um, I was in the very last semester, um, of my doctoral program, and about 2 months away from defending my research in preparation for graduation, when my dad called and said, "Oh, I have some bad news." He had bilateral kidney cancer, and so that means that there were tumors found in both of his kidneys,
Mm.
and that he had to have surgery ASAP. So I remember thinking as a student, and also as his daughter, right, that I was under a lot of stress already, but how could this be happening? How could actually this be happening right now, right? So
Mhm.
for a second, I really felt discouraged, which is something natural to happen, right? But I was even I was actually even going to postpone everything and run to his aid until I remembered everything that I had actually put into the moment that I was in. Everything that I had invested was at stake. So I had to stop and I said, "Okay, what are you going to do? What is your plan?" I stopped, I refocused, and I found myself, I carried on with my goal at the core of my thoughts. And it was tough, but so it's like, okay, well, that's easy to say, but what did you do, right? So I just took it one day at a time, right? One surgery at a time for my dad, because it was two surgeries during that semester. One research topic at a time, one written paper at a time for my doctoral work. And so with trust and faith, I was not only able to see my dad cancer free, I was also awarded with my PhD at the end of that semester. Um, so I would say, like, my take home point in all this is that it's important to take things slow when these challenges happen, right? Go step by step, um, when faced with that challenge. And I'd say always kind of keep your goal in mind to push you through. and to light that fire underneath you.
Mhm. Very well. Very good. Okay, I think we'll move on to number 4.
Mhm.
Okay, so next question is, if you could name one person who had the greatest impact on your life, who would that person be and why?
Hmm. I mean, this is a hard question for me too, but I have so many.
Mhm,
But I'm going to keep it along the same theme and with
mhm,
family, right?
mhm,
And so the core person I could think about would be my father. I mean, I want to say you said one person, but both
mhm.
my mother and father, I can't leave
Sure,
her out.
sure,
I can't leave
sure.
her out,
Of
Mom,
course.
yeah, she passed down characteristics such as the ability to be empathetic, yet firm to me,
Mhm,
always comforting and nurturing. And so I find myself being that with family and then others and my students.
mhm,
Um, my dad, on the other hand, taught me how to manage life and I would say how to handle the world, right? The world is not always the easiest place to conquer, right? But just kind of using the tools. I made sure to tell he made sure to tell me to watch out a lot of times for like people that would give you wooden nickels. And I was like, what does that mean? Until I was faced with it during my journey, right? I said, oh, I know what those wooden nickels mean now, right?
mhm, mhm,
Um, he taught me like good work ethic, how to have good work ethic and how to reach goals without ceasing. So again, I mimic those times of challenges, just keep going, you know, what the goals are, right? Um, they both had a heart of gold, is what I would say, which is something that I try to model every day. I really take pride in trying to be kind to others daily because you never know what people are going through, right? And giving and offering advice. All of these things I think I first encountered with my parents, which had a huge impact in my life, um, which I'm actually very, very grateful.
mhm. They sound amazing.
Thank you. I'm very blessed to have them.
Of course, yes, ma'am. Okay, well, we shall move on with our 5th question for now, because as we know, students may ask some more later, and then
Yes.
if so, we'll come back for a part 2.
Okay, great.
But our last question for now is going to be, what is your best advice for someone pursuing a major in a STEM field?
Oh, so my best advice for someone pursuing their career in STEM, I have several pieces of advice. One is to create a plan that leads you to your ultimate goal in life and with your future careers. Um, and after you create that plan, I would say make one action, just one, that initiates the plan and that gets the ball rolling. Because once you get the momentum, it's easier to kind of keep going. So and to get you through it. So
Mhm,
one, create a plan, write it down, and go after it. Secondly, I would say trust and have faith in where your path is actually being directed. Sometimes it's hard to think, okay, do I trust this process? But just do it, right? I keep hearing the phrase these days, trust the process, right? Um, well, I have to tell you, I really think that's important, right? And sometimes we can get so scared, but just trust the process. Um,
mhm,
and that's it. And then a couple others, maybe embrace. Oh, I think is really trust, like embracing your community is one I would say. The community here at St. Philip's, and other outlets for support. I think this is a really a vital step in getting the encouragement you need to thrust you to the finish line and using whatever resources you have available to you. And I would say last but not least, as with my case, don't be fearful of change if that happens. I told you that my path went like a windy road, right? Um, or transitions, don't be afraid of that.
mhm,
Um, it may actually end up serving as your true purpose, right? In the end.
Yes, I can see that. I myself have driven down the windy
The
road
winding
before.
road.
Yes,
And I find one might feel guilty for going down that road, but I really find value in it. Is
right.
the thing. Yeah.
I can sense that. Yes, for sure. Okay, well, we really appreciate you answering the questions that we had for you. If there's anything that the audience has, um, please be sure to either you can take a photo of the QR code that's here, which will automatically take you to the URL that you see on the screen. And we welcome any and all questions. If there are a few questions that we find, we will collect them toward the middle of March, up until the middle of March. And then if we have a good amount of questions, we will come back and record a part 2 to this presentation with Dr. Stacie Koonhow, and we will address all of the questions that are asked. But we really appreciate you taking time to come to this event. I missed on introducing myself at the beginning, but my name is Jessica Lopez, as you mentioned. And I work here in the math department, and we usually host this STEM lecture series to bring professionals like yourself to the students so that you can share your journeys, because those journeys are very important as the students are going through their journeys themselves.
Yes.
So we really appreciate you taking the time today to come and talk to us. We do have a gift for you, but I will have to meet with you in person to get that to you. But we definitely appreciate your support for this event and your time, for sure.
Thank you very much. I've had a great time.
Thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.